All right, traders, welcome on back for another edition of our weekly workshop, Traders Talk. I feel like we've just done this. That's because we literally just did last week on Friday, though. We normally do this workshop every Monday as such here today. Great to see all of us, though, here otherwise. Grant, Roberto, Uday, Farzad, Brad, got Bill, Atif, Jerry, all of us just joining us right now inside our live trading room. Great to see you there. Otherwise, just joining us back on social media, though, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works. All of us on social media out there on the internet streets. Just down below, hit follow or subscribe. Just at Cyber Trading U is our handle on social. But otherwise, I'll tell you what, we normally do this workshop every Monday. Just last week, we had to do it on Friday, which was Black Friday. So just came off of one. Here we are once again. Now, this one will be a bit more abridged because not as many email questions came in from students. Of course, all of our students and Fausto, myself, Rich, the staff here, enjoyed our lovely Thanksgiving with family and friends, and you name it. So, it's the time to take a step back from the market here, right? Now, we're coming back now on a Monday, not just today, but to begin our last month across the calendar year. So, rightfully so, people are back in the market for the next week or two, close out some last few, long-term positions, tax things going on there. And then otherwise, there are some good stocks that you could day trade just like any other week and whatnot. Coin, right? Now with that though, I want to go over a couple of different swing trades that we've been talking about. Got a lot of stupid pop-ups there, but nonetheless though, Fausto and I, you got to be inside our live trading room pretty much to, hear us on a day-to-day basis directly there. But we'll give you a quick synopsis as far as what's already happened. Now, Fausto had looked at this just from a week or two back, saw this big immediately because it's, breaking lower lows. It's dropping off here. But it was probably like right around here when he first started to call it out again. And, granted, from the last dip, it was possible it could have built a higher low. That's exactly what happened, of course. But, it ended up materializing. Now, for all of our students here, of course, higher lows are great. When a stock is holding support, all right, that's the beginning of a move up. Roberto, Grant, Uday, who else we got here? I see Barbara here as always. I got Margaret, Donald, Doug, Elmer, a lot of us that are always with us at least. After a higher low, what are we looking for afterwards? What comes after a higher low? What are we hoping to see after a higher low? That's the key. It's not always what it comes afterwards, but it's what we're hoping for. It's a higher high, right? HH, higher high, right? All of us, correctly answering. So, he was right on cue with the support. Now it's going up already with him in the trade. And I was a little afraid of this popping without me. Hey, we can't time everything perfectly, right? Even if we're looking to see a higher high goes up without you. So quite frankly, I was a little worried about this popping without me when he first called it out. Thankfully, it didn't have, it moved up a bit, but, wasn't really missing out entirely because it still needed to make a higher high. It still needed to at least make a local one at that over 32, just over this wick, this one here too. And thankfully, it was right on the 25th, just, before Thanksgiving, where he had called it out again. It was that morning, called it out, just on market open up, ding, ding, ding. And, he's already in the trade. So he saw from his own position manager that the Chipotle trade was going up for him. Figured, okay, well, maybe this is the day where it breaks out. And right then and there, I was thankful enough to, no pun intended with Thanksgiving, but I truly was thankful enough to be there with him on the mic at the time. And, saw the test of resistance. I jumped in right over 32. That's where I'm in from right now on the top right. You should see that there. And it's been smooth sailing ever since. We kind of covered this to a further extent in our phase 2 course, right? Who was here last week with us in the phase 2 curriculum? If you're a silver student or higher, who was with us last week? Because I really dug into the whole gap opportunity here. But, more or less after it made a higher low, it made a higher high. And thankfully from there, it's been just great since. But otherwise, we're looking for more. We're going to look to try and fill this gap and, possibly go up, if not all the way up towards here, like 39-ish, 39.50-ish. Maybe otherwise, these lows would possibly flip into a resistance. So, definitely be wary around like 38-ish, 38.50-ish or so. That could always be in play. If we look even further, longer back, maybe even before that, probably a little support flipping in here around 36 and change, maybe even here like 35.50-ish or so. it's not going to be like smooth sailing every single day, but since we had called it out again from the 25th, well, it has. Probably get a red day in between at some point, a couple red days, I'm sure, at some point there. So, I'm not too worried should that be the case. It's just a matter of seeing higher lows resume on the chart from this point, right? And then after that, another higher high. So it's been great to us so far. We're probably going to stick into this for a little while. The other one, though, and I already went over this to a great extent last week in Traders Talk. I went over this with my whole Twitter account. I was posting, my whole receipts from my bookmap post on there. But it's, you want to at least be on top of these trades, right, when they happen. Meaning that if I didn't notice the two giant iceberg orders on Figma here when it was a $75, $80 stock back in early August, remember, we had those giant orders on the bid at 33 and 35. Listen, if I didn't see those at that time, I wouldn't be clamoring about this thing. I'd be focused elsewhere. And that's okay. There's 1,005 other stocks to look at as a potential trade candidate. So Albert, Uday, Grant, Bill, Johnny here, Greg here, etc. Listen, if you didn't jump in Figma when we were calling it out last week, that's okay. There's going to be other trades on this, let alone other stocks too. But just point being for this one, ever since those iceberg orders showed up back from early August, that was a focal point for me. So when it pulled back there from last week, I felt confident enough to at least try the trade. You're never going to make money if you're too afraid to risk it, right? We'll get to Bitcoin even there in just a moment. But otherwise, just think about that. You're never going to make money if you're too afraid to risk it. So I was confident enough based on what I saw. And for right now, we're still holding up here today too. Nice wick down, pushed back up to the highs. If we have bookmap up right now, I think on the Figma trade, I was going over this with one of our new gold students just earlier on a call, just going over this here. We had big resistance right around 35.25. Showed up earlier in the morning. It held. Like it basically, as soon as the order showed up, the stock did a U-turn. It was like, I'm going to go in reverse. And then from there, the buyers regained control, pushed back above the VWAP price here and broke over it. New order showed up here for like a cup of coffee, but they pulled it. So it's been doing great since. And, at least for right now, there isn't really much on the order book trying to block it. That's not to say there won't be anything new that'll show up, but just for right now, we're still looking great on the Figma trade long term. And then today, obviously, doing pretty good. It's not even positive today yet, but that's because it started the morning down like maybe 2-3% pre-market. So it's done great since, right? Now, the last one I'll cover as a swing trade. Listen, Figma, Chipotle, those are two stocks that, quite frankly, we were lining up as a swing trade. Fausto on Chipotle mainly, me on Figma here for a while. The BBAI, I got to say, Roberto tossed this out to us in the chat board just as a day trade call out. And, this one we traded with great success back from September time. So it was more for the reason that it was trying to build support again. There's a chance that these wicks can be support again if it wants to pop back up. But we had great success on it back from mid-September. So when Roberto just, innocently called it out just one day last week, it was just a day trade call out at that. Well, right away I said, oh, that's right, BBAI. Oh yeah, the stock I made 42% on earlier this year. Oh yeah, let me just jump back to that real quick. And, it was just pretty much right around these wicks for potential support at $6 lingering there. And, that's where I took it. Now, if it ends up breaking these lows, I may end up pulling the trigger and just getting out. But so far, it's just kind of been flat since I'd entered. Up a little bit, down a tiny bit. I'm still up like 1.5% on it as of now. But it hasn't gone like too far. So I'm going to hang into this trade for the time being. But why did I trade this? Well, I traded it because I did well on it earlier this year. Okay, why did you do well on it earlier this year? Why did you trade it back then? Well, a couple of reasons. News came out on it. A politician here in the United States ended up disclosing a position on BBAI back from here, actually. It's a whole thing. But there's a news catalyst that involves just, not to say insider trading, but, most politicians, they aren't poor. You know what I mean? So just to say, anyone that trades in this market, they probably know what they're doing. So that was part of the reason. But otherwise, though, hey, I'm not overtly familiar with this company in and out. I don't know their CEO. I don't know their last earnings. I don't really know too much about the company. Uh, I know that we've day traded them in the past. That doesn't give me any reason to swing trade it, though. Hey, I've seen them actually in NFL stadiums this season. Believe it or not, I swear to God, they're like an advertiser, a sponsor for a bunch of different NFL stadiums. That gives me no legitimate reason to swing trade that. The reason that I was interested in swing trading this was the fact that this was at least beginning to make higher lows. And, well, at least across the last year plus, it was doing pretty good with that. And it had a couple of big pops up after. So if this wanted to try and make a higher high, one that would even be like, above, I don't know, like these highs here, that would be the home run target. But just to get me in the dance, all right, well, the stock, at least over the last year and a half, going into mid-September, higher lows. Pretty healthy graph, if I must say so. On the same side of that, there's a stock right now that a student of ours was asking about last week in our trading room, TE, and it was pretty much here at the time, one of these candles, like pretty much here or here, when they had asked. And I said, okay, well, it's not bad. It's looking all right. And the reason I say that is because, well, of course, it made a huge run up here, but it came back up again after this point. So it's starting to build that support. If it could stay over this from this point forward, there's a pretty good shot. When you think about long term, especially because long term, look what happened from the end of last year. It's actually breaking over that as a resistance level. They thought behind a higher high. Now, that doesn't mean kick your feet back, right? That doesn't mean kick your feet back, because once the stock takes its foot off the gas pedal, that's when it's going to look to kind of come back down pretty quickly afterwards. I mean, there's a trade that we were calling out as a potential swing trade. One of the Bitcoin mining stocks, Riot, if you're familiar with this one here, when Bitcoin was pushing upward back in beginning of September, well, Riot had a great breakout. When you look at it from the last year or so, okay, this looks really nice. And this resistance, you would hope to see flip into a support. Well, we'll get to that in a bit. But long term, well, it better look to do that, because long term, it's still made lower highs for a long stretch. Since 2021, this stock was making lower highs for a long while. And this is really the first crack where it's trying to break local higher highs, if not even further, back from 2023. So that's just where this came back down real nastily, and where you wanted to see it hold support here, it really didn't. How about this? This might be easy to kind of say with me asking. If I were to show the full painted picture, it might not be as so simple. But hey, we would expect for this broken resistance level to flip into a support here. It did not, right? That's easy to say. It broke below this as support and just puked. It dropped off like 20%, if not more. All right, well, what happens when a stock breaks below a big support level and it drops? Support should then become what at first? What should support then look to become once again? Resistance. So immediately here, just back from the end of last week, this was on that Wednesday, pop and drop, quick candle there. Now it gapped up overnight into that Friday morning, but this will be a real test today, tomorrow, Wednesday. Is this actually going to be support like it should have been on November 12th? Or is this going to pull back down below this even today? Like if it were to do that today, that's a massive red flag. If this wants to make any respectable swing move up, it's got to at least keep with higher lows and certainly play nice off this level. I say that because, well, look how easy to see that was as resistance. Just you can kind of say an area, maybe like that, put with that. You have this one wick here, obviously, but I'm focused more on consistency than anything. So, that's kind of where I'm just looking at back from 2024, 2025. This area certainly needs to flip into support going into this week. If it doesn't, again, that's just a massive red flag. So if it doesn't do that, hit the eject button, get out, move on to a different trade. It's okay to take a loss, guys, just so you know. I mean, that's where I'll get back to Bitcoin here, because getting to Bitcoin, well, it's trading at 84.7 now. Now, I'll tell you, going into this week, I was expecting some slippage. I wasn't so bullish on, actually, I'm not bullish on Bitcoin whatsoever. And you've known that for a little while, back from like 115, 116,000. So I just don't want to call myself bearish. You know what I mean? So I'm the furthest thing from being bullish, but I'm just not going to label myself as a bear. I am expecting down towards 70,000 going into next year at some point. So that's a super vague comment. That could be February, that could be July, some point next year. I could see 70,000. Now, with that said, though, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin will be like a direct trip down there, and Bitcoin could easily keep trading in a range. Maybe it could even go up to 100,000 first before dropping back down there, right? All right. So, point being is that going into today, I already saw the big pullback from 92,000, 90,000. So, I was thinking, all right, well, maybe if we're going to see a higher low, if we're going to get a support to build, then one price area that I had in mind, it was like around, give or take, like a couple hundred, 86.3, 86.3, give or take. Now, if it's going to act as support, you should get a pretty clean reaction off of it. It shouldn't look to make a lower low below there in the coming minutes, hours, etc. after you get in. So if I kind of show this here, and I'll kind of see if I can get the full data. Oh, that's weird. All right, that's fine. All right, so it shows the full data, but just goes to show going into like overnight, I actually took an entry on Bitcoin right here because it was the first time it was coming back down to that level. I felt confident with my price. Now, as soon as I got in, was it bouncing? Was it making this big slingshot right away? No. So I knew pretty quickly, I'm like, this might look to go a little bit lower before it goes a little bit higher. So I ended up pulling the plug. I took like a $250 loss, whatever. And I said, let's just focus on it tomorrow. Maybe I wake up and it's back up and I'll see if it could build support at that price. Maybe I wake up and it's down to 84,000. So, you don't get too emotional about it. But if it's not going to do what you're looking for it to do, then there's probably a reason why, right? You're not going crazy. You're not an egomaniac that the stock needs to do everything that you want it to do. No, but it just, you have a certain expectation. And if the stock doesn't do that move, then you got to learn and react and get out, cut ties with it. And that's it. So I took a $250 hit, and well, I guess it inched back up overnight, but it kept stabbing the damn thing over and over. So support broke, right? And Bitcoin dropped off even further, right? I'm going to have you answer the same thing that you just answered before. Tim, April, Dave, Chuck, all of us here otherwise. When a stock breaks below big support, what should support initially look to turn into again? Resistance. So is that so surprising to see Bitcoin pop, drop, and then it puked afterwards today? Not one bit. So I took a little loss on it overnight. It happens. It happens to everyone, whether they never want to show their losses or they want to be transparent, right? It happens to everyone here. So it's just to tell you that if it doesn't make that desired move that you're looking for, well, you better get out before you're holding on with a big bag, right? So I feel great about at least taking the entry. You're never going to make money if you're too afraid to risk it. But you're going to go broke if you don't set your stop. So, going back to Figma here. Yeah, I mean, again, just as on the swing side, this is not a healthy chart. By no stretch of the imagination, long term, is this a healthy chart. There's a lot more speculation with this bouncing with how this looks right now. Now, based on the icebergs and the pattern that I saw back from early August, well, I felt pretty damn confident with taking the trade. It's just a matter of, are the buyers going to remain in control now? I'll react if they start losing control. I'll react if the sellers start regaining control on this long-term trend, right? Now, BBAI, I'd say the same damn thing about, but at least BBAI the last year, year and a half, that's on a clean trend of higher lows, a much, much more well-respected trend that I could feel better on, right? I mean, why does everyone feel so good about NVIDIA? Why does everyone feel so good about Google? Well, of course, everyone knows the company, but even if you didn't know the company, even like a stock like, this was maybe a year or two back. This is from like 2023, 2024 time, but like an Abercrombie and Fitch. Okay, not too many people, well, I'd say a lot of people know Abercrombie and Fitch, especially here in the US. But if you don't know this ticker, know who they are, well, you got to respect the move up, right? OKLO and SMR, if you didn't know who these companies were before they had exploded, well, you do now, right? So it all starts with a well-respected trend, and as long as the stock is trading good volume. So again, just to point out the sheer difference on Figma trend is not good. That's an anomaly. That's a complete rarity to have that pattern on the order book. Those big icebergs that were on the buy side. I posted my Twitter link for all of us here just inside the trading room just earlier on that. I'll actually repost that. So if you're on social media, again, just you got to sign up to our live trading room. Just get the full brunt of our chat and commentary. But for Scott and Grant and Nabil, click that link right there I just posted to you, and you'll kind of see what I was talking about, just to rehash your memory on that. All right. Otherwise, that's pretty much all I'm working with here for today. We had a couple good day trades that we caught earlier on this morning. I'm still short on the SMR. Half my position I'm in from 1877. I took a 15 or 17 cent loss on this earlier as it made a push down and then back up. Right place, wrong time. And then once I saw it come back down, well, I'm not going crazy if I take the same exact trade a second time. I'm being a good trader, right? Because a good trader is going to be there at the right place. Just we're not always going to be there at the right time. Like we just said before, like with Figma or Chipotle, whatever it may be. So here it was like a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice. Well, also shame on you, but maybe a third time. You know what I mean? So it ended up breaking lower here. I got my entry off again. So I'm in from 1877. I took half my trade out just earlier, though. It ended up basically breaking a little trend line off the highs. And I said, all right, just take half out right here. Kind of right around there. I got out at like 1833. So it took half the trade out just at this point. Now I have still half the trade left. So if it wants to break down lower, I would love to see the SMR trade drop towards 18 bucks. If it doesn't make that move today, it's a non-factor. It doesn't really tamper with my day. I've already made profits on this. We killed it on the QT. I'm going to get to the QTTB. This trader's talk, I wanted to cater more towards swing trading, but we'll kind of head back to the flavor of the morning, at least the QTTB. This was, a pretty good trade, got me some good money. And that's where now at this point, if the SMR pushes back up a bit, it's a non-factor, right? For Scott, for Nabil, Grant, Joyce, Greg, Jim, who else we got here? We got Dave, Claire, Brian, all of us here. I mean, the primetime trading session is from 9:30 to 10:30. So if you already have some good money to work with early on today, then you don't need to rip your hair out trying to be a perfectionist on this trade, the next trade, or the one after that, right? For as much as I scream caution and, oh, don't trade this stock, it's got bad volume. Well, yeah. But if you already made your money on the morning, you could have a little responsible fun, if you know what I mean, right? If you already locked up some good money earlier on a trade or two, then you could possibly go over to a stock like, AHMA from earlier. I mean, this is kind of in the pits now, but, you could try and have a little bit more responsible fun, higher risk, but, still set your stop, still trade much lower size, things like that. But unless if you already had made your day's pay, or no, I'm sorry, unless if you've already made some good cushion money, I would probably just focus on stocks that are more tradable. Now that's where the QTTB trade comes into play though, because in pre-market, this was popping early in the morning. Made a much better move, as you could see, though, after the opening bell hit. Let's just say even live right now, but this is what this looked like in pre-market, folks. So Scott and Grant and Bill, just answer for me here briefly. What's the spread on this stock live right now? Just look at my screen. Look at the matrix on the far right side in blue and red. Just tell me, like, what's the spread right now? Generally speaking. Generally speaking. $0.01. I said generally speaking because it kind of opened up to 2 cents just a second ago. So 1 to 2 cents, right? So yeah, right now it's on a really tight spread. That's what it looked like though in pre-market. Just so you know, the spread that you're seeing here is very similar to how it was trading in pre-market. So had good orders out there in the morning. It was more tradable even at this point. Now, I didn't jump into this in pre-market. I had no skin in the game in this in pre-market. It's a Monday. It's the beginning of the pay period for December. Coming off just, long weekend, kind of feeling lazy. I don't really need to like start trading immediately at the crack of dawn or at 8 o'clock or at 8:30. Like, I don't need to if I don't want to, right? Could I have jumped in this? Absolutely. I chose not to. I'm just telling you that because that's just how the story goes, right? So, for anyone that was looking at this early in the morning, let's at least cover it. We'll, see how we could have traded this early in the morning. But remember, I certainly hope this is not the case. But, unless if you got a gun to your head and then, someone's got a gun to your head there kind of forcing you to trade, I think that we could all, wait a little bit, right? We don't need to trade this if we don't really want to. So, especially with how this looked in the morning here, you had a lot of like blurry white lines. You have a couple oranges out there, a couple smaller, darker orange lines out there. I wasn't like overtly impressed. There wasn't really anything I was like really inclined to trade, especially after 8 o'clock. Now, here at least you could say the more that this is testing resistance at $4 to even begin, there was no order out there to start at $4. But the concept of it is every time that the stock is going up and hitting a particular price, going upward, up, and hitting that same price, well, the buyers are winning that battle, right? So there's no order here. There's no demand at that price. So it comes down. It comes down. But you know what? There was at least something there to start, right? That leads me to this, because certainly there's a new resistance that shows up at $4, 18,000 shares. Well, because of the prior interest, this isn't the first time that $4 is going to be getting tested on the morning. It was already being hit here. So there's some residual buying interest to begin. Not much, but there was some. Well, the more it keeps nipping and testing $4, I'm expecting a much better pop and run. So essentially, it just ended up breaking the highs here by like 7:45, 7:46 in the morning. That was your move. Now, once it breaks over that and it starts pushing upward, maybe there could be another level that this could, flip into support after. Easy to say here, there really isn't. Kind of gets really messy afterwards. So there isn't anything that shows up like this for a little while that's as easy on the eyes. So I wouldn't feel good about really any other price. If you miss the breakout over $4 here, you're kind of left in the dust. You're either left in the dust or you're taking an entry where you should not be taking an entry. So that's just where it's totally okay to relax and just wait, right? Hey, real quick, Prem Kumar, Brad, all of us here just joining us. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs from it, resistance should initially become what? What should resistance initially become? Yeah, support. So maybe on a pullback, if we're watching this, the longer we're watching this, if it pulls back, then there's a good chance that we could see this hit $4. Then we can get our entry. Then maybe it could bounce. Well, in hindsight, close but no cigar. I don't think that this drops all the way down to $4 here. Something I will just mention briefly. Notice these crazy wicks. You got these crazy long candles and wicks here. Just disregard it. Sometimes you'll tend to see that right at 8 o'clock. And for a lot of the small cap, low float stocks, you'll see that on. It's just a lot of late reactions on the chart from volume that got filled earlier here. So it's called late prints. It's easy to say this, but just do your best to disregard these long wicks. Focus more on kind of just the overall movement of the candles afterwards, up and down here. Now that kind of brings me to this. It kind of just lays a couple pennies above $4. So if you're looking to take the risk and just jump in as it's kind of at the bottom here, you are trying to catch a falling knife. Ideally, I would want to see this nip under 4, then right back over 4. If it were to do that, I'd feel better about that entry. 8 o'clock in the morning, let's see. Oh, you know what? It looks like it does. Okay. So on Bookmap, you can bypass those weird wicks and you could just see this is the actual price of the stock. So, oh, this does exactly what you want it to do then. Perfect. Yeah, so it's easy to say, like, disregard the long wicks here, but it seems like on this one, I think it actually did nip under $4. Notice the white line goes below 4. So yeah, right there, it does technically make that famed under and over move. Oh, that's your entry. That's your entry right there. It holds over the VWAP even nicer afterwards, but just your entry is that under and over from 4. So if you were trading this in pre-market, it does give you everything that you need to take the trade. Now, I took this trade after the market opened up. I didn't trade this in pre-market because I didn't want to trade pre-market. Sue me. So it's just to say, what's our next level? What's our next big level? Well, to answer this, we'll go in 2 ways. For a cheap stock like this, what common set of price levels normally have the icebergs? For a cheap stock like this, what common set of price levels normally have those big icebergs on level 3 and level 4? Even without looking at Bookmap now, just an assumption we can make, right? Yeah, 50-cent levels and whole numbers. So after $4, simply put, what's our next level? Bill, Uday, 450. Yeah. So right away, my mind takes me to 450. Then after that, 5. So just because of the simple 50-cent level and whole number type rule, that's where my mind goes. Now, if there was an iceberg order at 450, then that makes it even further confirmation. That's your actual proof. So always check level 3 and level 4 for that, right? Well, you know what is actual proof also, alongside seeing like an actual order on the bid or ask at 450 or at $5 or whatever? You know what actually is proof as well? Just seeing this hold like a magnet here at 450. And again, I said don't mind the long wicks down. Those are kind of erroneous wicks. But otherwise, 450 was holding pretty damn well as a top, even before the 8 o'clock move occurred. And then simply, of course, it never really made a clean break over 450 here. So it did serve its purpose as resistance. Now, in pre-market, it actually even did break over this as resistance and it, flipped it into support, loosely speaking, and then it moved up to even 5. And then from there, that could have been the end of the move right then and there. That could have been just the end of the trade as is, right? Because it came back down. We're getting into the 9 o'clock move, and you don't want to be in a trade going into the market open. This already pulled below 450 here. It's below 450 again. There's no guarantee it's going to run again, right? And if anything, once it broke resistance and then it ran, it didn't really hold support afterwards. I know I kind of said it was holding support a little here, but when I say that a stock should hold support after it breaks resistance and it runs from it, focus on the last part of that. When it breaks resistance and it runs from it. So here, I'm not really saying it's running here. This is not a run. I'm going to say a run is when this breaks over 450 and goes up to the next resistance. It's a candle by candle by candle. It's trotting up there, right? So it broke resistance. It ran. So over here, where my cursor now is, in terms of just simple good old charting, I would feel good about this flipping into support right where my cursor is. Again, I didn't trade pre-market. I didn't want to. Sue me. Now, with that said, it's easy to explain why I didn't jump in here. Maybe I would have otherwise. If I was more assertive looking for a trade, there's a thought behind this, seeing maybe if it breaks under and over, I can see a move up. Seems like it just breaks under and stays under and drops. So, truth be told, there isn't really much of an entry there. Resistance did not flip into support after it broke above it and ran. Well, keep that thought in your head, because when the market opened up at 9:30 and this first started to pop up, well, we know where resistance was, right? At $5, of course, here, but also at 450. And it looks like it broke above 450. It ran from it again. So one more time, let's see if resistance could create support. And it's possible the more that it keeps banging on $5 before it comes down to 450, there's a chance it might just keep running, right? So I have that in my head too. But when it first breaks above 450 and it's moving up, I just keep myself grounded. Remember, it's a Monday. Like, do we need to just jump in right here right away? No. And again, this isn't the only stock that's moving. There's other trades out there. We have a whole watch list of stocks. I got my Figma trade. I got my Chipotle trade. I got SMR, which I was looking for a short on for the morning. So there we go. I got that now too. So it is to mention that there's no rush. Stay grounded. You knew where your levels were earlier, right? 450, $5. Well, it should have flipped 450 into a support level. If it wants to run higher, then it needs to flip resistance into support. That goes for any chart, but it is to say that the two most powerful words in trading, pound for pound, the two most powerful words in trading are the words if and then, right? If this wants to move higher, well, then it's going to need to flip resistance into support somewhere. So it's either going to be at $5 over time, or I'm going to get this pullback down to 450, and then we'll see what happens from there. So that explains the entry, right? Pulls back down to 450, under, over, ding, immediately going up, right? And think about that. It immediately went up. Well, that's easy to see, and that's easy to say now. But is this not what we expect out of any trade that we enter? When a stock breaks through a big level and we enter it, what should we be getting shortly after, folks? It's the reason why I took a loss on SMR earlier, because it did not do this. That's why I'm in SMR now and making money, because it's doing it now. Yeah, it's making you want to see it make a big move. So as soon as I jump in this damn thing and it pops up immediately, I'm not getting overly excited even. This is expected. It's okay. Hey, real quick, folks, what time is reversal time? 10:30, right? Now, did this reverse exactly at 10:30 in the morning? No. But when it first pops up here and it's like pushing over $5 and I'm only in this trade for a literal minute, I'm not really like worrying about reversal time at 9:43 in the morning, 9:44 in the morning, 9:45. I don't have my feet kicked back per se, but I'm thinking that we're probably going to see this push up a little bit more. Now, with that though, I still ended up taking half this trade out. It was like right around 560, 557 or something like that. It was just as it was consolidating here. Then the second half I ended up getting out. I'll show you in just a bit. It started to get pretty volatile over time. But let me actually just jump to a question that came in the chat right now. Maybe it was a question or just a statement. Uday was just saying, but Josh, QTTB had already gone up well above the 450 level. It moved up as high as $4.80 by 9:36 in the morning. Exactly. Exactly. So there is no but there, Uday. That's a great comment. That's exactly what it did. So it broke resistance at 450 and it ran up. So that's where I'm going to be patient. And I'm going to say, hey, that resistance at 450, that should have held a support here. That should have held a support here where, you would expect it to the first time. Well, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, also shame on you. Maybe a third time, shame on me. I'm going to look for this trade. And I did. So I jumped in right off that 450. But that's where I'm not going to jump in between levels, Uday. I'm not going to, see this trading at 480-ish here, 486, and just jump in. My levels are at 450 and 5. I'm going to hold myself to that. We can't break, strategy. If we are intending on breaking strategy, then just realize you're not going to have as successful as a trade. Now, think of how I just phrased that, right? I don't think there's a literal person here that intends on breaking strategy, right? I know Uday personally does not intend on breaking strategy, right? But it's a choice. You have a choice to just listen to this shit and try and apply it, or you have the choice not to. I have over my tenure here and unnamed, but it's tough to teach an old dog new tricks. And I don't mean that in terms of literal age. I mean that in terms of just habit. So for anyone that is super fixated on a strategy, it might go 100% against what Fausto and I preach. If it makes them money, it's tough for me to say that's a bad trade. But I'm going to make it a point to tell every other student, hey, that's not what we do here. And that doesn't work more often than what we, focus on otherwise. So it's a choice. You could focus on what works more often than not, or you could focus on, something else or something, that another trader is doing that maybe they feel good about, but you don't really know why they're doing that. So, to each their own. That's just to say, focus on what works more often than not. But the focus part is a choice. We have a choice to say, all right, I'm going to either get in off of 450 or 5 or not at all. Right? If we're that impulsive where we have to jump in here because it's going up, we really need to take a chill pill, calm down a lot, trade less size. I could refer you to a couple of natural supplements that could help with anxiety, L-theanine, something as simple and harmless like that, right? Things I take. Alan says, can you share where you typically have your stops on swing trades that you have now? Yeah. So to go into that a bit, yes. And so for this, at least I will mention for the swing trades I'm currently in on, I don't have literal stop orders out there for them right now. And maybe the BBAI trade I do still, but otherwise CMG and Figma, I don't have literal stops right now. Now, with that said, I am very diligent to stick to my game plan, Alan. So I'm not going to stray away from my game plan. And I know I have the choice to either break my line in the sand or get the hell out once it hits there, right? So, of course, bad news can come out. Stocks can gap down as much as they can gap upward. But hey, gaps, you can't get stopped out if there's a gap either way, even if you have a stop order. So just pointing that out too. Now, for Figma, basically 33, because from the link that actually, Alan, you follow me on Twitter because you know as good as anyone, honestly, literally Alan, and I see Jerry, a couple of us there. But it's just to say that iceberg, the lower of the two, there was one at 35, which preferably I would like to see Figma just stay over 35 forever now. But if there's any slippage from this point forward, 33 is my line in the sand. It's been my line in the sand since the entry because that's the lower of the two icebergs. That was my whole reason for getting it. So if it can't even hold over that, then I know the sellers are still in control of the move that they've been in control for months now. So you don't want to go against that. Chipotle, slightly different. This is in a really good territory here, but at the bare minimum to see resistance flip into support. So 32, where I got in from, ideally, I would need to see that just act as my line in the sand here. This was a clean entry right off a clean level. So why risk any more than that in this case? Because it did break resistance and it ran from it. So in a worst case scenario, I would look to see resistance flip into support. Maybe at the bare worst, the low on this candle, maybe the low on this one candle. But you don't want to move your goalpost down to here or down to here. Like, I got in for a particular reason. And if it wants to keep moving up in my direction, it needs to stay over this level now as support. All right. And remember, the whole thing with having a choice and whatnot, it sounds firm, right? It sounds very firm and strict and blunt and to the point. Well, I mean, hey, there's a number of us here that are doing this because it's fun and they're not trying to make the big bucks. They're just doing this on the side as a side hobby. You shouldn't feel so strict. And if you do, that's okay. But if your intent as a trader is to do this part-time or do this as a hobby and just very small and just for fun, that's perfect. That no problem with that, right? I am speaking more to traders that are looking to make this their full-time income. Traders that are looking to make 100K a year, six-figure salary, right? You have a choice to follow strategy or to not follow strategy. Now, that's where here we try and slow everything down. Even inside our trading room, we are moving around a bit in the mornings, in the afternoons. Things are hectic at first as a new student. But the more that you're with us and the more that you're going through our classes and you're in our Traders Talk workshops every week or more weeks than not, you're absorbing all of this information where it's like, well, hey, I thought I heard Josh say that before, right? Well, yeah, because I say the same catchphrases quite frequently because I want it to be sunken very deeply into your head because that way it'll be easier for you to focus on the strategy in the heat of the moment, right? There's a lot of fast moving numbers on this screen. There's a lot of bright colors on this screen. All we got to focus on is what's the direction? Does the stock have good order book? Where are my orders on the book? Support resistance. And then from there, hey, once we get into the trade, do we have our seatbelt on? Do we have our stop? And I'm speaking more on the day trade side of things, Alan, right? So that's where, of course, for trades like the KTTA from earlier, we had the one that we just went over before. I'm forgetting the name on QTTB. My dyslexia. KTTA, QTTB. What's next? ZTTC. So QTTB. Even with this, as tradable as this stock was earlier, look at where it's at now. This thing is dead in the water now. So if you don't know how to manage these trades after you get in, and certainly if you're ignorant of setting a stop, these stocks are very much flavor of the day, flavor of the hour, flavor of the day. I don't like to instill fear. I truly do not. I like to just, I like to tell you that the guy in the scary movie is made up, right? I don't want to drive fear into your head further, but it is to say this. Because this goes on the wall of shame. It goes on the wall of fame at the same time. Both. INHD. Remember this from last week? Yeah. Let's make sure that we set our stops. We got Christmas coming on up. We got Hanukkah coming on up here too, by the way. Speaking of Christmas, this is like a gold star short of a Christmas tree. See what I mean? We're like a gold star short up top here of a Christmas tree. Up, down, maybe a little lopsided here on the way down, but you better make sure that you set your stops. That actually is pretty, right, Kate? That actually is a pretty one. Every now and then across the year, you get a couple Christmas trees that look really nice. So this actually does look pretty symmetrical. A nice little Christmas tree, just missing the gold star up top. But hey, folks, we're gonna be more of an abridged version of Traders Talk, but you know me, I yap too long. Hey, great to see Rhonda joining us. Rhonda on YouTube, but one of our students though, just inside our trading room here and there. And great to always have you there, Rhonda, just answering earlier on YouTube as well as Dave. Dave, one of our longtime students. We appreciate you both joining us on the YouTubes here today. Hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving as well. Eastern Insider Live Trading Room. That'll be coming on up later today. But hey, for everyone else otherwise, if you wanted to subscribe right to our YouTube channel, Twitter account, X, etc., Facebook, LinkedIn, etc., 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 TikTok too, I still believe. Anyway, down below, hit the follow or subscribe button down below there at Cyber Trading U. If you're Grant, Kate, Barbara, Roseanne, Alan, Scott joining us right now, hey, stay tuned. We're going to keep going inside our live trading room here. Just keep the call outs going inside the chat board. And we'll be back later on for you here today, like I said, at 2:30, just for the afternoon meeting. Talk to you then.